Hello, my name is Allison Griffin. For my graduate research project, I will be presenting to you the merger of the Vernon Bank and Merchants and Farmers Bank. This research was conducted for Dr. Sanchez's organizational change class at Amberton University. We will start this presentation with an introduction to the topic of mergers and acquisitions. I will also introduce to you the two banks we will be discussing, the Vernon Bank and Merchants and Farmers Bank and Trust. Then, I will present my hypothesis statement that was grounded in the research material that was collected. After that, we will look into an extensive literature review. We will discuss what past research has had to say about the pros and cons of acquisitions and mergers, the effects they have on an organization, and characteristics of a successful merger. Next, we will talk about the change process starting with a SWOT analysis and including communication techniques, Cotter's change management approach, and the new vision for the merged companies. After that, I will propose some limitations to the studies that were collected and the methodology used to collect information. We will conclude this presentation with how the research will affect the modern workplace and what areas future researchers should focus on. Finally, I will give my recommendations, based on research, that the Vernon Bank and Merchants and Farmers Bank should follow in order to have a successful merger. Then you will be able to review a list of the references used for this presentation. Let's begin. Mergers and acquisitions are what we call a revolutionary change. Revolutionary changes are defined by Burke, 2014, as a major overhaul of the organization resulting in modified or entirely new mission or a change in strategy, leadership, and culture. Mergers and acquisitions have reached record highs in recent years, both in the number occurring and the monetary value of the merger. Courts have attempted to clarify the laws written on mergers and acquisitions. The main thing about mergers and acquisitions are that the goal is not to be bigger, but to be a better company. For banking specifically, mergers and acquisitions are done in order to reap the economic benefits. These are usually horizontal mergers, as they are all in the same field of work and are usually around the same size. Banks seeking to merge also seek strategic benefits of the merger. Now, let me introduce to you the two banks we'll be talking about. The first bank is the Vernon Bank. Founded in the early 1900s, the Vernon Bank is a small hometown bank in rural Louisiana. The bank consists of two branches, both in the town the bank was established in. There are a total of 40 employees that work for the bank, most of whom are above the age of 40, giving the bank a more mature atmosphere. Because of this, the bank is old-fashioned in both their customer service and their policies. The second bank, Merchants and Farmers, is the bigger of the two. Also started as a small hometown bank in the same rural Louisiana town, Merchants and Farmers Bank has expanded into a bank consisting of 8 branches spanning 2 parishes. Merchants and Farmers Bank is more modern than the Vernon Bank in both their technology and their policies. The main focus of Merchants and Farmers Bank is serving their employees and their customers. My hypothesis for this research project is to establish what the most beneficial route to organizational change is in the case of the Vernon Bank and Merchants and Farmers Bank. I also plan to establish why the chosen route to change is the best route based on past research. Let's begin the literature review with the pros of mergers and acquisitions. First, mergers force companies to reconsider their fundamental values, their roles in society, and methods through which they govern their organization. This is beneficial because forcing them to reconsider these aspects helps them get to the bottom of what they really want. Another pro is that according to many, bigger is better when it comes to the business world. Although bigger and bigger and bigger is not always better, we'll get to that later. 2/3 of companies surveyed in one study performed better in the long run after a merger took place. Mergers demand a more efficient use of a company's assets, so nothing goes to waste. Mergers and acquisitions also create higher value for shareholders in the short run after a merger. Mergers allow for growth and development in employees' careers because the company is expanding and will have more room to promote employees from within. This expansion also protects employees' jobs but that usually only applies to the companies that are acquiring another company rather than the one being acquired. Although there are many pros, there are also many cons of mergers and acquisitions. First, because of recent changes in law, taxes must be paid on acquisitions. To some people, aggressive takeover techniques are seen as an out-of-control machine because of the seemingly mindless and domineering quality these companies tend to hold. Big, dictating companies like that give takeovers a bad connotation. Huge companies that are constructed from large or multiple mergers tend to lose focus, gain overhead, and increase expenses for the company. Research also suggests that these huge companies become less innovative and competitive because sheer size gives them the standing they need with customers. Additionally, performance is not directly correlated to the company's size. Just because a company is larger does not mean it is performing better than companies a fraction of the size. One complaint about large-scale mergers and acquisitions is that it is making corporate America too powerful. For example, large restaurant chains like Red Lobster and Olive Garden are gaining so much power in the restaurant field that they are putting smaller mom-and-pop restaurants out of business. In the same way, mergers creating larger companies are having a negative effect on the smaller companies. Mergers and acquisitions can cause distress among employees. Employees experiencing a merger or acquisition are often uneasy and stressed, caused by the secrecy, ambiguity, and uncertainty of the organization. Although the secrecy is sometimes necessary, it can lead to unfounded rumors, which stirs up uneasy feelings among employees. Additionally, the distress of employees can make their work less efficient and less effective. Continuing with the cons of mergers and acquisitions, they can often be used to weed out aging, unproductive, or superfluous employees to increase productivity, efficiency, and profitability. Though this is a positive attribute for the organization, it is a negative attribute to employees who are at risk of losing their jobs. Downsizing is also common with mergers or acquisitions when the organization does not have the space for additional employees or does not plan to expand with the new merger. Some research shows that companies who go through big mergers lose value in the stock market. Turnover rates increase during a merger, likely due to stressed employees finding employment elsewhere, the acquiring company looking for fresh faces or opinions, or a number of other options. Mergers and acquisitions can cause a decline in permanent employment, job stability, and job security as expenses are cut or redistributed to different departments or levels. And because of the decrease in permanent employment, there is an increase in part-time and seasonal employment in order to save the company money while still getting the labor they need to operate. Finally, as mentioned before, big companies are a good thing, but not huge companies. If an organization gets too big and spreads themselves too thin, they are likely to see a decrease in profits and be less successful than their smaller counterparts. Mergers affect organizations in many different ways because of the significant changes they bring about. Companies experience higher return rates after the announcement of a merger. One of the biggest effects of a merger, however, is the impact it has on the employees of the organization. Unfortunately, employees are usually the last to know anything about a merger and therefore get no say in the matter. Also as unfortunate, when executives are too distracted by the needs of the merger, the needs of the employees are forgotten about. Change caused by a merger is imposed on the leadership of an organization. Though leadership may have some say in the change that will take place, they have little control over how the culture will change in response to the merger. The pace of the change will have a significant impact on the culture. One major influence over the effects of a merger is the human resource management and its roles in the merger. Human resource management is in charge of creating high-quality policies that will benefit the employees and the organization as a whole. Human resource management is in charge of handling cultural differences between the different organizations coming together. Human resource management also decides the extent and quality of communication between the companies and between the executive management down to lower-level employees. And finally, human resource management is in charge of using qualified integration advisors to facilitate the change process. There are a few characteristics that a successful merger tends to have. In a successful merger, leadership cares for their employees first in order for the employees to then care about the clients. Success of the merger depends on individuals' perception of the changes that will take place, such as how the change process is handled and the direction that the change is headed. In a successful merger, there is ample communication and there's a transparent change process. During such an important change in an organization, followers will determine who they will follow and how the leaders will be perceived based on how well they communicate and respect the followers through the change process. Successful mergers have a clearly stated strategy. This strategy includes good communication and paying close attention to the human resource policies that were put into place for the merger. A good sign for a successful combining of two companies is that the companies have similar operational alignment and agree on core values and beliefs. If the companies are run similarly, it will ease the transition process for employees and customers. The last characteristic of a successful merger is having external consultants who have experience with mergers and acquisitions. This will ensure that there is a knowledgeable, valuable opinion on all matters dealing with the merger. Now, we will conduct a SWOT analysis. Some strengths of the company are their customer service, low fees and affordable rates, hometown culture, and their easy and simple policies. However, they do have some weaknesses. First is that the companies seem to be falling behind on modern technology. They have no plans to expand to more branches. They're lacking effective communication methods, and they have little to no opportunities for career development for their employees. Some opportunities in the environment around the bank merger is that they can eliminate competition. They can also build customer loyalty, and they can expand their clientele. With the merger, however, there are some threats the banks need to be aware of. First, there are larger banks coming to town. There's also the ever-changing world of technology that the banks need to stay up to date on. And there are additionally federal policies that are changing that the bank needs to be aware of and account for in all of their policies. Now, let's discuss the change process of the Vernon Bank and Merchants and Farmers Bank. There are some changes that should be expected. First, the policies and procedures of the two banks must merge together. Additionally, services offered will have to change. The management and leadership of the banks will also have to change along with the merger. And the banks will have to update their technology, their goals, and the methods. If the organization does not change despite environmental pressures, it's most likely because of resistance. There's going to be resistance within the company with employees because employees may not see the changes necessary, or they may prefer their old habits and procedures to the new changes. There may also be resistance from customers. Customers may prefer the old way of doing things because it's more convenient and more familiar to them. They also may dislike the methods of the rival bank that's coming together. In order to ensure that the change is going to take place, the bank is going to need to eliminate resistance to the change. There are a few ways that they can do this. They can show employees that the change is necessary. They can ease employees into the new ideas and give them a say in the changes that are going to take place. They should also give customers a smooth transition into the changes. They should even boost customer service around the change period for assisting customers in the change to make it easier for them. The bank should also build a sense of community between the two rival banks. Because the banks are two small hometown banks from the same town, there's been a lot of rivalry over the years. If the bank is able to bring the employees together and put the rivalry aside, the change process will be a lot easier and they will be much less resistant to the change. In order to sustain the change, the bank needs to be ready to deal with any unanticipated consequences. As with any change, you can't expect everything or anticipate everything that's going to happen. So employees need to be ready to deal with the unanticipated consequences of the change. The bank should also ensure that they're keeping the momentum going. The executives of the bank should choose successors because they won't be around forever. They need to be able to choose people who can step up and take their place as leaders of the company. They also need to continue launching new initiatives. It's very important in order for a merger to sustain change that there are constantly new initiatives coming out. There need to be new ideas and new things that the employees are always learning. Things need to continue to change. Otherwise, the employees will all fall back into their old habits. Communicating the change is vital for any organization experiencing a change. For the banks, I've included some communication strategies that they can use. One of these is including employees in the decision-making process. When employees are included in decision-making for the bank, they're less likely to have resistance and more likely to feel a part of the change that is taking place. The bank should also keep open lines of communication with as little secrecy as possible. As mentioned earlier, secrecy and uncertainty, although it may be necessary sometimes, can cause a lot of anxiety and stress among the employees. So as long as the executives keep these open lines of communication and they're honest with their employees, they can minimize the stress that the employees will go through. And the last communication strategy is that the executives should keep the change process as transparent as possible. This includes open and honest communication and including employees and letting them know what's going on and what decisions are being made. The media that the company should use to communicate is mostly through meetings and email. Meetings are in-person conversations that will help everybody in the decision-making process feel included. And emails just keep everybody up to date so that nobody is left out of the loop. Some important skills that a communicator should have during an organizational change is honesty, inclusiveness, and building team spirit in all forms of communication. They should minimize any negative communication and instead build up the group going through the change and make sure that everybody is on the same page and that there's no ambiguity. The change management approach that I think the bank should use is Kotter's change management approach. Kotter establishes 8 different steps that an organization should follow in order to ensure the change will occur. First, they should establish a sense of urgency. They should demonstrate that the company will fail without the merger. They have to demonstrate to employees why the change is such an important thing. Next, they should create the guiding coalition. This means building employees' sense of team between the two banks. So putting aside the rivalry and making everybody feel like they're part of one group. Next, they should develop a vision and strategy. This includes creativity, emotional connect, and objectives. They should communicate the change vision. As mentioned before, communication is very important. They should use clear and formal communication with all employees. They should also empower employees for broad-based action. Ask employees for feedback in order to gain support or getting their opinions on things. It gives employees the feeling of empowerment, like they're included, like they have a say in the change that's going to take place. The organization should also generate short-term wins. This means minimizing the pressure that works towards the overall goal. They should also consolidate gains and produce more change. So the organization, no matter what's coming their way, should not give up. They need to be persistent in the change. There will be bumps along the road, but they need to keep working towards the change. And finally, they should anchor new approaches in the culture. So they need to reinforce change by implementing the change into the culture and the daily lives of the employees and the customers. The vision of the company needs to change as the companies come together. Here I have listed the Merchants and Farmers Bank vision to provide better banking through superior customer service. The Vernon Bank, however, is to provide friendly, old-fashioned personal banking service combined with modern conveniences and technology that customers have come to expect from their banking facility. So when the two banks are coming together, they need to have a new vision. So I've created an example of a vision that they could both work towards. It's a combination of each of their individual visions. So the new vision is to provide customers with superior customer service through modern conveniences and technology. That's keeping the goals of both of these banks in the new vision, which is providing great customer service and being a very personable bank, but also being a bank of convenience and technology, like using technology that customers will appreciate moving forward with modern technology. There are some limitations to the studies. First, there's a lack of empirical studies in the way that mergers and acquisitions affect the employees as individuals. There's also a lack of research on successful change processes. The majority of studies focus on theories without a practical application. So basically the limitations to most of the studies is that there wasn't a lot of applicable information, nothing that you could really take about employees as individuals, and a practical approach on how mergers and acquisitions actually affect an organization. The methodology used for this research was mostly through online scholarly journals. There were also some printed scholarly books used, and the personal experience and knowledge of the companies, as I have worked with both of these companies. So how does this affect the modern workplace? This research provides the information that can help company executives decide what steps need to be taken to make a merger or acquisition successful. This also teaches us how to minimize the negative effects and maximize the positive effects the merger will have on the stakeholders. And finally, analyzing the current merger will set an example for future companies in a similar situation. So here's some suggestions for future research. Researchers should focus on the effects that mergers have on individual stakeholders. This includes lower-level employees, mid-level management, executives, customers, anybody who's involved with the organization at all. Researchers should also focus on the practical application of past research on the current workplace. They should research which steps and tips can help a company maximize the benefits and minimize the negative effects of mergers and acquisitions on individuals. So here are my final recommendations for the banks. Be inclusive through open lines of communication. Consider the needs of employees through this difficult change. Treat customers with the utmost care and respect. Make the transition as smooth as possible for them and understand their needs and complaints through this difficult time. Build a culture in which employees from both companies will feel comfortable and welcome. And finally, continue to make changes. Keep the momentum going. If a company is sitting still, they're falling behind. Change needs to be continuous. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could also take something from it about mergers and acquisitions and maybe apply this to any organization you may be involved in going through a change like this. Thank you. Have a great day.